Hello. In this lesson we're going to be talking about Java classes, objects, and methods. This is basically an introduction to object-oriented programming, or OOP, which is the basis for making scalable and reusable code. So let's get into Java classes. A Java class is essentially, when we create a Java application, we have that main class, which is the static void main and the args. We can create other classes which can be added on and used from application to application. Through the classes we can create objects, and we can manipulate the objects through methods. Methods are essentially functions for classes. If you've taken any PHP classes, you'll know that the functions are essentially the same thing as methods. So without further ado, I think it would be best to kind of show you how classes are formed in Java. So let's go ahead and create a new application. In this application, I'm going to name it Lesson 4, but it's actually going to be about, we're just going to go through an educational one, so I'm going to name it a university, per se. So first, I'm going to create a new class. So as before, we've been using the new project, the folder. This time, we're going to use the new file. I want a Java class, and we're going to name it students. Click Finish. This creates a second package, second class, called Students. As you can see up here, I have Lesson 4, which had the main, and then I have the Students class, which includes the package from Lesson 4. So within the class, I can declare, and this is where encapsulation becomes important, because we want the variables to only be referenced through the class itself. We don't want them being referenced through the rest of the application. So we can perform some encapsulation by saying private, which means that it's only available within this class, and we're going to name it a string, and we're going to say that's the student name. But the students also need to have an age, so we're also going to make another private variable, an integer, for the student age. Okay, and then one more, we'll do private, and we'll use a double to do the student GPA. Okay, so right now we don't have any of them initialized. Well, they're initialized, but we don't have them declared at what value they are. Now our class also needs a constructor. The constructor is called upon when we create objects. So if I wanted to create a student right now, I would use a constructor, public student, and this constructor would create public students would create a just a basic student object. But we want to initiate some variables when we create a student, because obviously our students are going to have names and ages. So in the arguments, we're going to add a string, call it the name, and a integer, and we're going to call this the age. Now, in our students, we're going to set the student name equal to the name that was provided, and the same goes for the age. Now this is all great. We can create objects, but we're going to need some type of method to be able to retrieve the information that we set. And I'll show you this, why it's important here in a minute, but these are known as getters and setters. So Java NetBeans has a functionality that lets you automatically create getters and setters for the variables that you could declare in class. But just to show you how they're kind of created, I'm gonna walk you through it step by step for the string student GPA. We're gonna use it to set the GPA and get the GPA. So we want to use it, make it public. We want it to, when we're getting something from the application, we want it to return. So we're gonna input the return type, which we want to return an integer, and we're going to name the method get GPA. Here we're going to return the student's GPA. So that's telling me that we have a incompatible type because I declared it as an integer while our GPA is a double. So we need to fix this to a double. Now, that's great and all, but we still don't have a function to set a GPA. So let's create a public set GPA function. Now notice this time, we actually can put public void. Notice how I use void instead of double. When I say void, that means that the statement or the method that I'm creating is not going to return anything. It's simply going to process some code, but it's not going to return anything. So that's when we use void. When the code is going to return something, we declare the type that it will return. In this case, we use double. So up here, public void set GPA, and we want to say what type of input that we will set. I'm just going to declare a variable called student's GPA, because up here we have student, so I don't want to mismatch. And we're going to set student GPA equal to the student's GPA. Okay, and we're basically going to do the same thing for the student name and student age. So public ints get student age, and we're going to return the student age here, and then public void set student age. Now you might be wondering, why would we want to reset the student age? Well, maybe they just had a birthday. Okay, so set student age. We also need to put in the type, so we'll put string, and we'll just put in an age for now. So we'll declare the new student age equal to the age that was set. Okay, so now we have get student age. How about the get student name? And we're going to assume that the student's name is never going to change, so we're not going to use a set. We're just going to use a get. So public string, because we want it to return a string, get student name. This method will return the student's name. So now we've got our functions. So let's find out how we can use them. So we go back to our main lesson here, and let's go ahead and declare a few objects. That way we can use them. So let's say when you're declaring an object, you start with the class name, which is students, the name of the variable you want to create, first student, equals new student. New students, sorry. Now, you'll see that it's giving me an error message. This is because I did not add the arguments here, whereas in the constructor there are two arguments. So to satisfy the constructor here, I could have created a basic constructor, or over here I can add the methods that it's asking me for. So it was the name and the age. And now my students is satisfied. But let's say I wanted another student as well, second student. Equal new students. And let's say this one is John, age 25. Okay, so now we have two students. And you can see how the reusability, we can continue on and add various students. And these students are encapsulated in the first student and second student statements. So, how do we get information from our objects now? Our object is first student and second student. Well, to get information from our objects, we can use the methods that we declared in our class. So let's say we want to get the student's name. Well, here we have a function to get student name. So let's write a system out print line. Well, let's do printf, just so you know how to format it properly. The first student's name is, and we can use %s for a string because we know it's going to output a string. The argument will be first student That's the object. Then we want to get student name, the method that we declared. Now that method will return a string, so it will satisfy our system out. So let's go ahead and run it. You'll see that the first student's name is Tyler, and that's exactly what we set it to be. Now, we could do this. We could easily copy and paste this code, modify it a little to print out the second student's name. And you'll see the second student's, well, here, let's add in a new line using %n. That way our function looks a little neater. And then you see that John is presented there. And let's add on their age as well. And their age, is, and we know that it is a decimal value, so we will put %d. And we have to add on our get method to get the age. So our get method was the object dot get student age. And we'll add our new lines to the end, just for neat formatting purposes. Let's run that. So, first student's name, Tyler, age 28. Second, John, age 25. But let's say John has a birthday. So here we'll say John has a birthday and is now 26. So to update the code, we would have to say second student dot set student age, and we're going to set the new age to 26. Now, if we run the same code as before, I'm adding a new line here just so we can see, so it kind of separates it a little more. We'll see that John was 25 here, then he had his birthday, and now John is 26 because we reset the age. So, in a nutshell, we talked about classes. We have our main class here, which is the main, but then we created our own students class for creating our student objects. In our students class, we encapsulated several variables, which we did not use the student GPA, but we could in the future if we wanted to. We also created methods. Let me backtrack here. We created a public constructor, public students, which takes two arguments, the string name and the integer age, and creates a student based off those two operators. You could also create various other constructors if you wanted to declare students or objects with different variables. Then we created methods for manipulating our data. Because it's encapsulated, all of our information is private, but notice how our our methods are public. Because we have declared public methods, we're able to access them through the lessons class. And that's what we did. We created a new object by referencing the class, creating the object, and then we created a new object and we declared the constructor requirements. From there, we just basically outputted the information with system out printf, and you saw here that we used the actual methods as the arguments because they returned the appropriate data types, an integer and a string. And then down here we use the set to reset the age. So in a nutshell, classes, objects, and methods. In later lessons we'll talk about polymorphism, subclasses, and superclasses.